Before our service began, I asked those in the know about whether there were any announcements, and I was told that the announcements are on the big screen. Well, that gives me a minute to mention something that came up on the announcements. I noticed that one of your announcements refers to Tolpuddle Hall. Now, this is fascinating to me because although I grew up in Halifax, when I was 12, my family moved to England. And when I was a schoolboy, I learned about the Tolpuddle Martyrs. Little did I know that 50 years later, I would be preaching in a church founded by one of those martyrs. It's a thrill for me to be here this morning for many reasons. But I also know that only a fraction of you know this story, and almost nobody out there knows who the Tolpuddle Martyrs were. And this is a story that should be told. So I'm going to take a minute, indulge me, to talk about the Tolpuddle Martyrs. See, I'm into local history. But this isn't just a local story. Where on earth is Tolpuddle? How many of you know this story? Yeah, a fraction. Well, good. Gives me something to talk about during the announcements. Tolpuddle is a village in Dorset. And in 1834, in Tolpuddle, Dorset, 6 men, most of them Methodists, were arrested, tried, and sent to Australia to work in a penal colony. And what was their crime? They uttered a secret oath. They banded together to fight, to press for higher wages, a living wage for farm laborers. And the British establishment was so terrified by the French Revolution, which had just happened about a generation earlier, that these 6 men, mere farm laborers from the village of Tolpuddle, were sent to Australia. Now, the British public heard about this, and they were so incensed that they demanded the return and the pardon of these 6 men. Pressure grew. It took time, but after about 3 or 4 years, these men from Tolpuddle were sent back to Britain. That moment, they came to Britain and received a hero's welcome. It was the beginning of the modern British labor movement. So when you think of the history of trade unions and all that unions have done for us, you think of the Tolpuddle Martyrs, because they were the ones that planted the seed. These 6 men from a tiny village called Tolpuddle. Sounds like a children's story, doesn't it? By the way, if you go to Google and type Tolpuddle Martyrs and you'll see a video, click on closed caption, and the captioning will say, it's Tolpuddle. It's Tolpuddle. Now, this is where you come in. These 6 men came back from Australia. They started to live their lives again. But after a little while, they decided to move, to pick up stakes and come to the New World. They came to Upper Canada. Most of them settled around here. And the founder, or one of the founders of this congregation, was a man named George Lovelace. George Lovelace was a very intelligent, literate man. He's written books, we have them in the public library downtown, that he wrote, critical of the church, critical of the establishment, critical of those who would keep farm laborers down. He farmed a few hundred yards from here, from this pulpit. He's buried in Siloam Cemetery. After the service last week, I went to the cemetery to stand by his graveside. It was moving. George Lovelace is a hero. If he was Catholic, he would be a saint. He's one of ours. We should remember him. In fact, he is remembered. There's a website called Tolpuddle.com. Every year, there's a Tolpuddle Festival where leaders of the British Labour movement remember what they did, George Lovelace and the Tolpuddle Martyrs. You can see I'm getting worked up. I'll stop now. Just remember, this congregation, you have a rich heritage. George Lovelace and the Tolpuddle Martyrs. Amen for them.
This is unrehearsed, and forgive me for wanting to say something, but it ties in so nicely with what you've said, Mark. Several months ago, a gentleman by the name of Jeff Anderson, whom I had never met before, from Coburg, contacted me, and he said he was part of a group that is trying to preserve the cemeteries where George Lovelace is buried, and I think there are 4 of them in total that are buried in between 2 cemeteries. I think 2 of them are here in the Siloam Cemetery, and 2 of them are in Mount Pleasant Cemetery. The gravestone markers have fallen into great disrepair, and the signage needs to be corrected. And so they have initiated a project to raise funds to restore those cemetery markers, and it's called the Tolpuddle Martyr Cemetery Restoration Project. It's on GoFundMe, where they're trying to raise funds to support this restoration work. And the reason they contacted me was because I was part of the trustees at that time, and they wanted Siloam to receive the money and pay for the projects because they needed a charitable organization through which they could do that. With council's approval, we agreed to do that, and so the work is shortly going to get underway, as I understand it. And if you go looking on GoFundMe online and look for the Tolpuddle Martyrs Cemetery Restoration Project, you will see additional information about that. Thank you so much, Mark, for introducing that topic.
Great.
During
Thank
the
you.
announcements.
Thank you.
Thanks.